Big one today. It is hot sheet. It is Baseball America's big time of year. Following the draft, of course, now we go over the prospects that could get moved, the top 100 updates, the whole deal. It's JJ Cooper. It's Geoff Pontes from Baseball America. Make sure you get yourself a BA subscription, please, so you can check out all the amazing premium content that Baseball America puts out there. If you have questions and you're in the YouTube chat right now, we will take some of them. We're keeping an eye on them for you, okay? This is a big time of year, obviously, for prospects on a particular team potentially getting moved or ones that you maybe should think about keeping if you're a particular general manager. So JJ and Geoff, great to see you. It was great to see you both in person in Texas at various times. And let's get right into our first move. And then I will mention a little special that we have a little bit later on too for next week. But first move first. Top 100 prospect list is updated. Geoff, do you want to run through some of what we should expect to see now that we have draft picks getting signed?
Yeah, we added a handful of draftees to the top 100 list. A lot of that is obviously based off of the great work that Carlos Collazo does. We have a similar grading scale, obviously using the same scale, 2080 on the tools. So it's pretty easy to sort of slot these guys in. We had a really good conversation, really productive conversation yesterday. And we have 6 or 7 new top 100 prospects, actually, based
10.
on the draft. But we actually
10.
have, it's 10? We have 5 inside of the top 50. I know that for sure. But yeah, we had 10 that moved inside. So there you go. Fairly exciting. I think this is a great time of year. And I think, all of us that make lists, whether it's at Baseball America or other sites, we're all sort of waiting for, some fresh, blood into the list, some new players, some exciting players, guys with high end outcomes. And it's really exciting. We got Charlie Condon all the way inside, the top 15, Travis Bazzana inside the top 20, 3 inside the top 25. So I think it's pretty exciting.
The thing I'll point out, kind of tying off that, Charlie Condon is our highest rated draftee, joining at number 13, which you may know he didn't go 1-1. But that's not how we do this. When we do this, we had Charlie Condon rated as the top player on the board. And if you look at it, this is also the thing that's kind of fun with the draft. Charlie Condon, Chase Burns have the highest signing bonuses so far. Probably look like they will end up having the highest signing bonuses in the class, even if Bazzana went 1. So we don't line it up as the guy who went 1 ranks number 1 in our top 100 of the draftees, who went 2 goes 2. It's nothing like that. We try to reflect the talent, but also our reporting that we did before the draft, after the draft, all that. And so Condon and Bazzana lead the way, but we have 10 guys from the draft who slot in. And it's a nice thing, as Geoff mentioned, you get to the middle part of the season, the graduations happen. There are guys you want to add in, but it gets a little thin at times. And now we are absolutely kind of flush where we've got prospects we had to bump off the back of the 100. So as more players graduate, we have prospects we really want to add back now, as opposed to where we were at the end of May, early June.
Yep. And then I want to get some context on what kind of top 100 prospects could get moved this time of year. But also, like I teased, I want to mention that we will be on at a special time following the trade deadline next week. So usually this show is 3:00 Eastern time. If you're watching us live, I know many of you catch this show afterward or listen to the show on the BA podcast page afterward. But if you want to be with us live and ask questions about the prospects that were just traded, then make sure you join us 6:30 Eastern time. So I know that'll work for some of you coming off of work. 6:30 East Coast time. Foul Territory is going to be on from 3 to 6:30 on Valley Sports TV and on the Foul Territory YouTube channel. So right after that, we'll flip over to Hot Sheet to get the prospect perspective from the BA crew. So with that being said, JJ, in the past, we do get top prospects traded this time of year. But when I was looking at the work you put together, it's kind of less on the top end side than most people would expect. We're talking about big names like Crochet, maybe Tarik Skubal, and then that gets matched up with big names on the Orioles and the Dodgers, but we don't often see those top 1 or 2 team prospects getting moved that are high up in the top 100, correct?
Correct. I mean, if you really look and say top 10 prospects by our midseason rankings over the past decade, you've got Eloy Jimenez and Addison Russell, which goes back to 2014. So that's a ways back. Addison Russell's been out of the big leagues for a number of years now. If you look at top 100 prospects, we see usually 3.5, about 3.5 top 100 prospects traded at the deadline. And we say the deadline's kind of all of July, I would say. And that's probably less than people expect. But the thing that is a key kind of determiner of this is what kind of players get traded. If a Skubal, if a Crochet gets traded, that's going to blow that away probably. We saw that when Juan Soto was traded. When Juan Soto was traded, well, that was C.J. Abrams and James Wood in addition to big leaguer already and Mackenzie Gore and things like that. You do see kind of the massive long-term, the guys who aren't just a rental, then you're going to change this a little bit. But if you're talking about rentals, if you're talking about guys whose contracts expire at the end of this year and hit free agency, well, then you're probably not talking about multiple top 100 prospects if you look at past trade history.
Yeah, and I think you have to take into consideration the context of the contract situation, what the cost is, what the potential cost could be in arbitration. We have two arms here that are sort of at the top of the market right now, whether it's Crochet or Skubal, who have 2 years of control remaining beyond this year, which makes them even more valuable, especially when you consider they're both, in that sort of mid to late 20s sort of area where guys typically reach their physical peaks. You maybe even have a few extra years with guys like this, and there's an opportunity to maybe sign them to an extension. And I think that the message here is if you're going to buy at the top of the market, you really got to shop with top of the market assets. And there's a handful of teams that are competitive right now that could potentially get really aggressive here as we sort of wind down to the trade deadline if they're willing to sort of drop the assets needed to make a big move like this. I think the other point that I'd make too on, not necessarily moving the top of the market, top 100 prospects don't get moved that much. We do see a lot of guys where teams shop, very smartly in terms of how they target the complexes in some of these other areas. An O'Neal Cruz, somebody like that wasn't a top 100 prospect when he got moved, but was somebody that, certainly had the tools, certainly had the upside to develop into, a top 20 prospect in the game. We've seen that a few times, whether it was James Wood, whether it was O'Neal Cruz and others. So, some of it also is, you can learn a little bit about what other teams think about these teams' prospects and who potentially should be valued maybe a little bit more as well.
Geoff, do you think a team like the Orioles can break the mold this year because of how much they have in the prospect cupboard? It's easier and maybe a little less painful because there are so many names to like that are still top prospects in their system.
Yeah, I think the biggest question mark with them is, do they have sort of the high-end pitcher that they could move? Maybe Cade Povich fits into that a little bit as like a secondary piece or fiduciary piece. There's maybe an opportunity there. I think when I look at the assets that are available, it's the Orioles. Certainly the Red Sox are another team that has high-end prospects. If they want to part with one of those sort of big three or even big four, if you want to include Christian Campbell, they have the ability to do that. I think, the roadmap for those top deals is looking at, top end players like we saw with the Juan Soto deal, where, there were a handful of players that were all had, high end pedigree that were moved. And I think that's really where you have to play. You have to have those 3 or 4 pieces to be able to move for somebody that has multiple years of control and, all-star upside immediately.
Yeah. The thing I would say with that I look at it and say is the Orioles, if they want to, if they target Skubal, if they target Crochet, I feel like they're the team that can trump anyone else because I look at it this at the deadline when you're offering prospects. You're obviously, if you're going to trade a Skubal or a Crochet, these are not rentals. These are players you only trade. Even in the White Sox case, I think you only trade them if you feel like that the return you're going to get is going to make you a better team next year, the year after. So you're kind of looking for that proximity in addition to premium prospects. I don't think you look at the Mariners. The Mariners are a team who has probably as many quality prospects in A-ball as anyone. But I'm probably not trading a Crochet. I'm definitely not, if I'm the Tigers, trading a Skubal for a package of Class A prospects who are, 2 years away and there's more risk involved. That's where the Orioles obviously jump out because they have, let's say if a Holiday is available, Jackson Holliday, but even if not, a Kobe Mayo, they have big leaguers who they could trade like Colton Cowser, Heston Kierstad. They have guys behind that like Connor Norby, who's kind of blocked with them, but is a very solid prospect. They have guys in Double-A, Samuel Basallo. They have guys who are close to the majors, and they can, if they want to, put together probably a better package than anyone. But at the same time, maybe they aren't willing to do so, and there are a number of other teams out there. Geoff mentioned the Red Sox, but I kind of throw the Phillies in there. This is Dave Dombrowski. Dave Dombrowski is, and the Phillies are both, they've been very aggressive. And I do think the Phillies could even put together a package where you could round it out and say that they could be competing for one of these guys if they so desired.
All right, let's get to some fan questions here as we're chatting. It's bringing up some kind of notable questions this time of year. From Kevin, we'll start. Should the Red Sox trade a couple of prospects for a starter? If so, which ones? Raise your hand if you want to grab this one first. Jeff?
Yeah, I can. As the official Boston representative here on the show, I'm happy to jump on this one. But I think that they can go at this a couple different ways. They certainly have the high end pieces and position player prospects as well. If they want to make a bigger move for one of these top of the market arms, they certainly have the ability to do that. Do I think that that's something that they're looking to do? I don't think so. I think they want to keep this core together of, what they've sort of dubbed the big three when it comes to Meyer, Anthony, and Teal. I think they want to keep those guys together. I think they can shop more in terms of rotation depth, bullpen depth. I know Rengifo has been mentioned as a second base option as well. It's been a position where they've not been able to get a lot of production, regardless of how hard they've tried over the last couple of years. They have the secondary pieces in this system that I think could be attractive in a package, for somebody that, doesn't sort of fit into that same mold as a Crochet or a Skubal who's going to really change the top of your rotation. I think they do have the ability to shop sort of in that middle market, find some depth, find some pieces that doesn't necessarily, sacrifice their future in this up the middle core that they've been building in Portland.
Another AL East question. Let's go to the Rays, and this one involves Cooper Kinney. So we'll bring it up and check out what the Rays are going to do. It's a highly talked about team because of where they're at in the standings, because of, a trade they already made and someone like Aaron Savali, although, they had room or they needed room in their rotation. So we'll bring that one up and kind of see what we can muster up. This from Luke. The Rays have so many infield prospects. Rays will sell, but could you see them trading, say, Cooper Kinney, who leads all of high A in doubles, to get someone who helps them now as well?
I will say with the Rays, never rule anything out, because I think that the Rays, almost more than anybody, are a team that is always looking at what they have, and they're willing to trade prospects for prospects. They're willing to trade big leaguers for big leaguers. They look at it as okay, you value it this way, we value it this way, we're comfortable in our evaluation, let's do it. So I wouldn't be surprised at all to see them trade an Isaac Paredes, because he has a lot of value on the market, but at the same time, that would clear the way for the now healthy again Junior Caminero maybe to step in at third base. But I could also see them absolutely trading. They do have a lot of infield depth. They really have a lot of hitter depth, the position player depth, because you throw in what, they have, again, Trey Morgan, Chandler Simpson have a great years, in addition to obviously having Carson Williams as top prospect, Xavier Isaac. You mentioned Kinney. There's more prospects in the Rays system right now than you could kind of find spots for them in the next year or two. But I think that with the Rays, it's kind of always like, are they selling? Are they buying? The answer is yes. They're kind of constantly churning their roster. And I wouldn't be surprised at all to see them trade for prospects, but then also maybe even trade prospects for a big leaguer, because that's what the Rays do.
Yeah, and everything that I've heard just through sources over the last week or so is that they're probably more looking to retool this season and sort of look forward to 2025. So I think they could be one of the more interesting sellers. The difficult thing with the Rays is arguably, the three biggest buyers in this marketplace are all within the division teams they're going to have to compete against. And I'm not so sure that they're necessarily looking, to make the Red Sox, Yankees, or Orioles better at this moment.
Can we show some of the top prospects that have been dealt over the past decade? I know we kind of alluded to the storylines here, but I want to actually just do a quick history lesson, because I think this is important too. You can fall in love, and if you follow Baseball America, you probably often do fall in love with certain prospects. And that's great. but you should also keep in mind that you're following these prospects if you're a contender so that you can trade some of them away and get that last piece of the puzzle to win a World Series title. Okay. So here's the top prospects that have been traded at the deadline in the past decade. The top guys on the top 100. Okay. The podcast crowd's not seeing this, so I'm going to read it. And I'm going to start at the top. Eloy Jimenez in 2017 was ranked number 5. Addison Russell ranked number 5 in 2014. CJ Abrams, that's a great one. It's looking good right now, obviously, for the Nats, number 11 in 2022. Okay, now things get a little more interesting. Anderson Espinosa, 2016, number 15 on the list. Keibert Ruiz, okay, 2021, number 16 on the list. Hector Oliveira, number 17 on the list in 2015. Woo. You can Google that one for some interesting articles. Daniel Norris ranked number 19 in 2015. Austin Martin was ranked number 21 in 2021. Clint Frazier was a top 21 prospect. He was at the 21 slot in 2016. And Brett Phillips was number 22 overall in 2015. So add all of this up, guys, and there are more misses, whatever you want to call it, that help to tell the story, JJ, that if a team is one piece away, often the right decision is go for it.
I would say that generally, if you acquire the best player in a trade, it's a blockbuster deal, you're usually going to win out, right? Now, if you trade for a rental and then you do nothing, with that rental, if you don't make it far in the playoffs and all, I get it. You can absolutely regret that. Jeff Bagwell waves his hand as an example of something like that. Jeff Bagwell for Larry Anderson or Doyle Alexander for John Smoltz, if we go way back. But at the same time, once especially you get outside of the top 10, the top 15 prospects in the game, there's a lot of risk. There's a lot of variance there. And the players sometimes, Jeff mentioned, like, if you look at the last 10 years and you say, who are the players that teams most regretted trading away, it's probably Yordan Alvarez for Josh Fields. It's probably O'Neal Cruz for Tony Watson. Those are a couple of examples. And those are much more modest trades at the time. Yordan Alvarez hadn't played a pro game at that point. O'Neal Cruz was years away from the big leagues at that point. That's the dream everyone has, is that you're going to pick up this prospect. And Fernando Tatis Jr. being picked up, wasn't a deadline deal, but being picked up when he's still in rookie ball. Those are the kind of trades everyone dreams of. They don't happen very often. Most of the time, you end up getting someone who either has a very short big league career or no big league career in most of these trades. We see about 60 players, 60 prospects traded every July. And out of those 60, if 2-3 of them end up having good, long big league careers, that's a pretty good trade deadline. So the weighting here is often on the side of the team acquiring, because you're also taking on salary, and that's something that often teams don't really, they'll often give away players because they want to get rid of the salaries as well.
Yeah, and I think if you look at that list too, there were a lot of players, we'll say, outside of Abrams and Eloy Jimenez, and maybe to an extent Addison Russell, a lot of guys that were sort of trending downward in terms of what their prospect stock was. At the time, I think a lot of us that were working in the prospect space sort of knew there were starting to be some question marks with Anderson Espinosa. Hector Oliveira, as you said, that's when you can Google. There were a lot of question marks there, an older Cuban player, which, was really unique. Daniel Norris, certainly was another guy that I think kind of trended up and then was trending down pretty quick. So I think when you look at that list, there's a lot of players where, once again, teams are kind of showing their hand a little bit as like, we're not all that enamored with this guy. We don't necessarily have him as high as you do. A lot more about their own players than, other teams necessarily know about the players that they're potentially acquiring.
One more question here from a fan for now, and then we'll bring in Ben Badler. Trey, what prospect package would it take to potentially pull off a Garrett Crochet, Luis Robert package for the Dodgers? This is one that's getting talked about a lot in Los Angeles, and there's been some rumors floated out that even a Kopech could get added. But just for these two, what do you think it would take on LA's side, JJ?
So you're going to have to go volume more than top end talent here. This is the one thing that is kind of tricky with the Dodgers here. Dodgers still have a great farm system, but this is not a Dodgers farm system. Normally we're saying, here's their top 25 prospects, here's their top 50 prospects, here's their top 100 prospects. There isn't as much top end talent. There's been graduations, there's been trades, there's been injuries where there aren't as many slam dunk, this is the cornerstone type player of this trade. There still are some, but they have incredible catching depth. But at the same time, Dalton Rushing, Tyrone Lorenzo, Diego Cartaya, I don't think, especially in Lorenzo Cartaya's case, that they have as much value in a trade right now, maybe even in Rushing's case, as they did coming into the year. You look at the Dodgers pitching depth, they still have pitching depth, but we've seen they've been ravaged by injuries this year where there aren't as many of these pitching prospects to kind of say, okay, this is a plug and play, stick him in your rotation. We saw what River Ryan could do last night. He's a very impressive pitching prospect. He could be a cornerstone player in the deal, things like that. But I think that if you said, okay, they're, especially if they're going for Crochet and, they're going the twofer here with the White Sox, I think you're saying a large chunk of a good chunk of the Dodgers' top 10 prospects, in addition to a couple of further on, guys. You're going to talk about a mixture of close to the majors guys, maybe an Alex Freeland, maybe a River Ryan, more further away, a Quintero, who's kind of a very fast rising prospect, further away rookie ball guy. I think you're going to have to talk about the Dodgers trading a good chunk of the top of their system to get that kind of talent, because if you compare them to, say, an Orioles, the Orioles have more close to the majors top end prospects than the Dodgers do right now.
Maybe some Dodger fans just heard that and they're like, maybe we'll just go for one for now, just to keep some long-term talent. Geoff, thanks for joining us. As always, great to see you, and everyone follow Geoff's content on Baseball America on Twitter. We'll post some of these clips, and Geoff, we'll talk to you next week for the big trade deadline show.
Looking forward to it.
Thanks. And let's bring in Ben Badler to join the party as we get ready to go on our weekly trip. Ben from Baseball America, already tracking 2025. Ben, good to see you. And here we go. Let's hop on our little bus.
Yeah, thanks for having me back, Scott.
It's like a large van. Holiday adventure time. Okay, Ben, great to have you back. But instead of starting with Jackson, who is the face of our holiday adventure segment, let's go down to the next holiday talent, super talent, Ethan Holiday, and where you ranked him.
Yeah, he's the number one player in our 2025 high school class rankings. He's been number one for at least the past year now. Everything just looks really, really polished with him at the plate. It's, he's bigger than his brother. He's built more like his dad. He's 6'4", about 210 pounds. Beautiful left-handed swing. It's just so smooth, compact, easy, good rhythm and balance. He tracks pitches really well. He's one of the most disciplined hitters in that high school class. You rarely see him expand the strike zone. Probably even hurts him a little bit at the high school level, because I call a bigger strike zone there, just because otherwise we'd be there for a long time with the strike throwing ability at the high school level. So, but he doesn't chase. He doesn't expand the strike zone. He doesn't get out of his approach. And he has huge power too, and he doesn't have to sell out his swing to generate that power. He doesn't get super pull conscious or uphill with his swing. He uses left center, can drive the ball well to all fields. So I think if everything clicks, as a guy who has a chance to get on base at a really high clip and a chance to hit for potentially 30 plus home runs in the middle of a lineup one day.
So JJ, now let's move to Jackson and what's up with his status. And also, do you think there's any chance that he actually ends up getting moved? I feel like if we said this before the season started, people would be like, oh, hell no, you're crazy. This is the top prospect in the sport. It's hard enough to get any team to trade one of their top 2 or 3 prospects, let alone the top prospect entering the season on the Baseball America Top 100. Does anything change given that, he didn't have success at the big league level, got hurt a little, he had some struggles in the minors, now he's picked it back up again? Or do we look and say, hey, let's all chill, he's a baby right now?
I'm still going to be skeptical that he is going to get moved. I think that everyone listens on everybody, right? Like, if you want, again, Shohei Ohtani may not because of the contract and all that, but not any non-free agent signee, who doesn't have a no trade, things like that, it doesn't have that kind of money tied to him. You listen on anyone, but at the same time, you have to be blown away. The thing that Holiday's done, he's prominent on our hot sheet at baseballamerica.com, the hot sheet report that we did this week. because he had a very good weekend. Most notably, back in the field playing second base again. He had been DHing only because of a sore elbow. Back in the field, having a really excellent July. We're seeing the batting, hitting for average, getting on base, and hitting for power that we've been expecting. And the thing that you say, he is a baby. He is someone who is still 20 years old. He's younger than many of these guys that we're talking about who are still in A-ball. Here he is in AAA, already haven't reached the majors. But that said, I wouldn't say it's impossible to imagine a scenario where he gets traded, because the reality of it is if you are the Orioles, you have depth at everywhere. And again, you listen, right? Like, you listen. And if there's a deal out there where it's like, look, as much as we believe in Jackson Holliday, we believe this will make the team better for this year, next year, the year after that, you have to at least think about it. And that's the kind of thing where the history tells us, no, he's probably not going to get traded. There hasn't been a prospect. He's number 2 on our board right now, our top 100. No one that high has been traded. We didn't used to do a midseason list, but I would struggle to come up with an example of anyone that high on a top 100 ever being traded in season. I'd have to go back and do a little bit more research on that, but I can kind of think of the number 1 prospects in my head, off-season number 1s, and they don't get traded in season. That's something where I'd say it's unlikely, but at the same time, that doesn't mean it's impossible. Ben, like, as you look at kind of where Holiday is now, look at where the Orioles are, look at where Kobe Mayo and the rest of this team is. Like, do you think that they need to be really aggressive, or are they the best team in baseball right now? And so, arguably the best team right now, and they already made their move with Corbin Burke.
Yeah, I think they're already a great team, but I think they can be aggressive without trading Jackson Holliday, though. I mean, if they have a bunch of other potential trade pieces that I think would have a lot of value to other clubs, Samuel Basayo, Kobe Mayo, Heston Kjerstad. The Red Sox, I don't know, it wasn't in season, but, they traded Yohan Moncada, who was, I think, the number 2 prospect at the time. That was for Chris Sale, who was on a very team-friendly contract for several years. So, I wouldn't say Jackson Holliday should be untouchable if there's something like that becomes available, but I don't see something like that where they would have to give him up when they have so many other valuable trade chips in their farm system to deal from.
Let's get another fan question going here right now. Wesley is up next, and he has a Cardinals question for us. Let's check that out. Cardinals have been criticized for Alcantara, Gallen, Rosarena, etc. Were any of these guys very highly touted? Ben, do you want to start?
Gallen, not particularly.
He was top 100 at the time he was traded. I did look this up. Okay. Number 78, I believe, on the top midseason top 100 that year at the time he was traded. So,
all right. And I always loved Rosarena. He wasn't as highly, I don't think we ever ranked him in the top 100 though. And then I have to go back and check on Alcantara. Was Alcantara that high for us, JJ? I don't think he was.
He had been a top 10 prospect, I believe, for a while. I should say, with Gallen, It was when he was traded from the Marlins to the D-backs. He was top 100. So he was regarded, but not that regarded when the Cardinals traded him. But yeah, Alcantara had been a big arm, I would say. I don't think it was expected to become a Cy Young, type guy at that point. But this is, I think, where the Cardinals, the thing that jumps out with them, they had a time where they had kind of an abundance of outfielders, and I think sometimes you get in trouble doing that. It becomes something where you look around and you say, okay, Adolis Garcia and Randy Rosarena, we can do better than this. And you look back on it and go, maybe we couldn't have. So I do think that you can understandably criticize them for moves like that those moves did not work out. At the same time, it's something where the Cardinals, I feel like, kind of got caught in between on some of those. They had a little bit slower developing prospects that they weren't ready just to hand the jobs to. And I give the Rays, I don't give the Rangers as much credit. I give the Rangers credit, but the Rangers also, in the case of Garcia, he was a guy who was then DFA'd by the Rangers as well. But in the case of the Rays, they saw it as, hey, we think that this is an undervalued prospect. And they were willing to trade premium talent because Liberatore was a premium prospect at the time as well. So that's one where I think that the Cardinals did get kind of under-evaluated their own player in an example like that.
Let's finish with this. Ben, are there any teams that stand out to you that really kind of fit the mold of having a lot of ammo to make a deal right now, teams that have been brought up besides the Orioles. I'm going to take them out of the mix just because they get talked about so often.
Yeah, I mean, they'd obviously be the obvious one. I think the Brewers, too, if they wanted to upgrade, they have a lot of interesting trade chips. I mean, the difficult one with right now is their number one prospect, Jefferson Kiro, who's a catcher. Like, I think it makes a lot of sense to trade him, but he is out for the year with an injury, so that might make it a little bit tricky. But I still think they have one of the better farm systems in the game. Jacob Misiorowski is a top 100 prospect. Tyler Black is in the top 100. Probably be a bit of a divisive prospect depending on the club, but athletic guy looking for a defensive home, really high on base skills. Doesn't really seem to have an obvious fit right now in Milwaukee. And then they have a whole bunch of pretty intriguing guys at the lower levels, especially some pretty intriguing young arms. So I think they could be a team if they wanted to be aggressive. Could make some upgrades.
The one I'm going to be fascinated by is we obviously know that no one is more aggressive than the Padres and AJ Preller, but this is not normally. I give the Padres all kind of credit that year after year they keep producing high-end prospects to kind of be able to swing these deals. Every time they trade a ton of guys away, which they do often, they seem to be kind of able to regenerate. But this is a year where a lot of those prospects, a lot of their top prospects haven't had great years and probably have less value right now. Ethan Salas is still a premium prospect, but he's a 18-year-old who's in high A and not really hitting. So it's going to be hard to kind of see him as a cornerstone guy in a deal if they wanted to swing a massive deal. The pitching prospects they have, Robbie Snelling, Dylan Lesko, haven't really had the seasons you want to see from them. Leonidas DeVries is in low A, was just signed this year. Again, great prospect, but I'm going to be interested to see if the Padres feel like they need to do something. And if they do, is it going to be more kind of the standard prospect trade and less the big swing, which has kind of been the Padres' MO in recent years?
Great questions today from the crowd. Love seeing everyone getting very active in the chat. We're going to do this again next week. We do it every single week. The change is 6:30 Eastern time, a little later, okay? So if you're at work, you can swing by and catch the show live. If you've been watching it after the fact on YouTube or wherever you get your podcasts on the Baseball America page, thanks for checking out Hot Sheet. Thanks to Ben and Jeff and JJ. Make sure you get yourself a Baseball America subscription. If you're listening, you probably have one, but just a reminder for everyone, enjoy these trades coming up over the next several days, and we will see you on Hot Sheet next week.